I touched on previously the story about the 2 live service games that Sony canceled pretty much out of nowhere. And when I say out of nowhere, I mean, nobody knew that these games existed. Like, the rumor was for a long time that the game Bluepoint was working on was a new IP. That's what the rumor was. People with knowledge of the situation said that it was a new IP. Turns out they were working on a God of War live service spin-off game, and Sony Bend's live service game was also canceled, and that was allegedly using tech from Days Gone, and it was a whole thing, and now it's dead and buried. The point of this story has to do with how they went about this, but first, impulse thing is that it's insane that anybody thought that this was a good idea. I have not found a single person online who said, oh, God of War live service game, that sounds so fun. Like, that sounds great. Not a single person. I haven't found them. If you found them, if you can come across somebody, tell me. But I can't find a single damn person. Everybody that has heard about this is like, thank God they canceled it. And here, like, Bluepoint, I'm sure, very capable, probably could figure it out, honestly. But who wanted that? Seriously, who asked for this? The answer is quite simple. Nobody did. Nobody wanted this. Everybody thinks this is a bad idea. And their choice to do it is pretty clearly motivated by greed. The greed in their hearts. There's really nothing else that can explain it. And people throw around the term greed a lot, and it's kind of a pet peeve of mine because sometimes it's not greed, it's just the reality of business. If a company is producing, like somebody was saying that GTA Online being a thing is greed, Take-Two's greed. And I'm like, I mean, GTA 6 is going to cost $2 billion to produce when all is said and done. That, like, they're going to make a lot of money from day one sales and from people buying the single player game, but they're not going to make $2 billion. Like, do you have any idea how much money that is? $2 billion is unbelievable. But that's how much that game will have cost them when all is said and done. And as a result, like, part of what they're doing is they're also building up this online element, which is part of the $2 billion cost, to be fair. But the live service element is how they're also subsidizing and paying for the single player component. It's just kind of how they have to do it. Now, where greed comes in is when they overstep and where you start to see shark cards and when you start to see like the sort of predatory microtransactions, loot boxes, things like that. Like Call of Duty, when they break the game with a gun that's like totally busted and it just so happens to be available in the store right when it becomes the meta because it's so busted. And they're like, yeah, it's just a funny coincidence that keeps happening. Yeah, it's DMR zone right now because the DMR is so broken. We'll get around to fixing it in a couple weeks, but as for right now, it's available in the store. And so if you don't want to grind it, just go check it out. Like everybody knows what they're doing. But in this case, all of this, I'm bouncing around a lot, but because I missed you guys. I'm out of practice. With regard to like a God of War live service game, they are taking an IP that is storied at this point. I mean, it really is a well-established franchise that is focused on story, on narrative, on, especially since the reboot in 2018, it's focused on character arcs and things. To take that and rework it into a live service game is insane. It's ridiculous. I mean, and what's even more ridiculous is that this was greenlit presumably right after Demon's Souls launched, which was a highly beloved and very well received remake of the classic game, of course. That was a PS5 launch title. And then Herman Hulst and Jim Ryan have them do a live service God of War game. And at that point, remember, that was before God of War Ragnarok launched. So they were looking at just God of War 2018 and said, yeah, let's do a live service game. It's unbelievable. But that's who's leading PlayStation at the moment. This is why I've said for a long time, I don't know how Herman Hulst could still have a job. I don't know how it's possible. Like it doesn't make sense to me. He has consistently failed his way upwards in the company. And, part of his push, and Jim Ryan is also very, very responsible for this, to be fair. His whole push was the live service thing. But Herman was supposed to level that out. And Herman was supposed to have his pulse on the gaming industry to know what they like, what they don't like, what they need, what they don't need. And Herman has just totally failed at every step. And yet somehow he keeps getting promoted. he still continues to climb his way up. And this is why, like, my prediction at like back in December, I think it was that Herman would not survive 2025 as co-CEO of PlayStation. I'm like, I think he might just happen to retire or pursue a new opportunity at some point this year. Because at some point, how many billions of dollars do you have to waste before you lose your job? You know, if I lost, well, let me take it out of this. I have employees. Jacob, how many billions of dollars would you have to lose me to get fired? Even though you're my brother. If you lost $1 billion, I think you might lose your job. If you lost 1/10 of $1 billion, I think you'd lose your job. No, 7. I'm saying, like, the idea that you could, at this point, like Bungie, $3.7 billion on that. Concord, by some accounts, $400 million, $4.1 billion now. They canceled a further plethora, dare I say, of live service games. This is, Radek put this together. You can see PlayStation was planning to release at least 12 live service games, but when making the list on stream, it's actually more than that. Only 3 have released so far. 1 was released, then quickly shut down. 7 have been canceled. Another 7 we're still waiting on. And as you can see in this full list, Concord lost tons of money. Fair Game $ has lost tons of money. It might make it back. Horizon multiplayer game. This represents hundreds of millions of dollars, no doubt. Marathon represents hundreds of millions of dollars, no doubt. These might still be successful. We don't know yet, though. Horizon MMO from NCSoft. That's in partnership, so that's kind of tricky to include here. Media Molecule live service game, unannounced. Maybe canceled, maybe not. Bungie Gummy Bears, unannounced. Maybe canceled, maybe not. Jason Blundell's LA Studio game. Who knows? Last of Us Online. This probably cost them hundreds of millions of dollars. They started working on it in 2019, is my understanding, before the launch of The Last of Us Part 2, when it was just factions, and then it evolved into its own spin-off game when Herman and Jim kind of decided, this looks great, let's do that. So this, when all was said and done, probably cost them $200 million. 4.3 now. Twisted Metal, let's say 100. 4.4. The Great Web by Insomniac, who knows, 50 million to 100 million, we don't know. London Studio live service game, that disappeared. God of War live service game from Bluepoint, they spent like 4 years working on it. It's dead. Ben Studio live service game that they spent another 4 or 5 years working on, like, that's also gone. By all accounts, like, conservatively, $5 billion have been spent on these live service games in the pursuit of live service cash money. And they've gotten Helldivers 2, that was a success, so there's that. Gran Turismo 7, I guess you could say that's a live service game. Yeah, it did have microtransactions and stuff, so yeah, I guess you could say that. And then Destruction All-Stars. Like, that's the legacy of the heads of PlayStation for the PS5 gen. It's unbelievable. And as I've said, I don't know how many billions of dollars you have to burn before your boss calls you to the office and says, what are you doing? Because I would think 1 billion would probably get you screwed. 2, I don't even know how you still have a job. 3, are you trolling me right now? 4, this is insane. And 5 billion for a company their size is ungodly. It's insane. All of this is wild, but as you can see in this article put together by Paul Tassi on Forbes, it quotes another series of people, but basically what the vibe of the story is as outlined in the title, and I encourage you to read this because it brings up some interesting stuff. Concord has it scared Sony straight on its PlayStation Live Service ambitions, and part of the feeling for this is that there are leadership shakeups going on within the upper echelons of PlayStation. Specifically, there are strategic shifts that are being made. And this is significant because it kind of came out of nowhere. And one of the ways we know that it came out of nowhere was because Bluepoint and Bend staff learned their live service PS5 games were canceled at the same time as everybody else. It's claimed now that the people making these games were sitting in the studio working on the games, and then they just saw on X that their games were canceled after Jason Schreier broke the story and all this happens. To be fair, there is an update. Jason Schreier questions the story, stating on Blue Sky, which he posted now. I think he got off X. He said, "It's not true. People across the org were informed before my article went out last week, but there's other people saying that they weren't, or at least they weren't aware." At the very least, it seems like if there's debate over who was informed and who wasn't, or whether people were or were not, it was not a well-known, whoops, wrong button. It was not a well-known thing within the studio, okay? Or at least it was not as clear as it probably should have been. But either way, it seems like these decisions, these shifts have been made very sharply, kind of almost at a last minute like pace. I'm sure the decisions were made months ago from the leaders, and they're only enforcing them now or bringing it up now. But still, it's very, very interesting how quickly this pivot has been made, because just a year ago, Herman Hulst was allegedly telling people within PlayStation that Concord was the future of PlayStation, that Concord was going to be it was going to be their Star Wars. People openly called it Herman Hulst's baby behind closed doors. Nobody wanted to criticize the design directions or what they were doing because they knew how much the game meant to Herman and the other PlayStation executives, how confident they were in their goals. Really, it paints a picture of a company that has not just no leadership, but a company whose leadership is just maybe delusional is the term, or woefully misguided at the very least. Very misguided. And that's almost worse than being rudderless. Because at least being rudderless, you can occasionally stumble into success or stumble into the right place. When you are just totally mistaken and you're actively going the wrong way, you will never end up in the right position. You're only going to end up in the wrong place. You know, if you're in the middle of the ocean and you know, okay, the port is over there, so we're going over there. At least if you're just floating kind of randomly, kind of throwing random crap at the wall, you might end up over there. But if you're going the total wrong direction, confidently, you're going out to sea and you're going to sink, you know? And that's kind of where PlayStation's been at for going on 5 years now, it seems. They've poured so much money into these live service games and projects that has just gone nowhere. And now we are seeing the consequences of it, and where all of this is going just seems to be just burning cash at this point. But people are questioning whether this is the start of a new direction because these projects are getting canceled, because they are rearranging their release lineups and they're trying to figure something else out. This year is going to mark some pretty major bets for them, though. This year we are expected to get Fair Game $. Yeah, Luke, you're totally forgetting how much of a hit Fair Game $. Is going to be. Yeah. I do feel kind of bad. I don't. Interesting little thing is one of the senior level designers on Fair Game $, followed me on X. I was like, oh, what are you doing here? Like, if you want to talk, let's chat. But I was like, are you hanging out? Are you keeping an eye? What are we doing here? But yeah, this game, they have a lot of money riding on this. But I have also talked to people who, let's just, in typical journalistic jargon, I've talked to people with knowledge of the situation, that I'm very, very confident have knowledge of the situation, who have said probably 60-70% of the desire to buy out Haven was for the talent. It was for the programmers, the developers and stuff, the tools, because there's a lot of people at Haven apparently who have experience working at places like Google, who have experience working with cloud tools and developing cloud tools. And so that's a big element of the acquisition. The game, of course, they hope the game is a big hit, but the other big part of this is the software and the talent that they bought out. But this game, I mean, they revealed this, you can see copyright 2023. They revealed this May 24th, 2023, going on 2 years ago. 2 years ago. And we've heard nothing since then. Nothing. You can see after Concord died, a lot of people came back into the comments and started talking about it again. Concord jumped so Fair Games could dive. Gamers, Concord is the biggest flop in the history of Sony. But wait, there's more. Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody expects it. And as I've shown you before, this is an actual QR code. Actual QR code. If you're feeling curious, take your phone right now, open the camera app, scan it. You know what link pops up? Take their period money, and it takes you to their website to enter like a newsletter, whatever. It's insane. It's crazy. So this is a big bet of theirs that has not been canceled yet. Okay, so they feel confident about this one. To be fair, they also felt confident about Concord, so take that with a grain of salt. Beyond that, they also, of course, have Marathon, which is a big game that they're betting a lot on. They've already invited content creators, streamers, and stuff out there to get their feedback. So we'll see how that turns out. Live service games, though, are so tricky because it's not just about whether streamers like it. It's also about whether like average consumers like it and whether audiences watching streamers while playing that same game like it. You are threading such a fine needle with these live service games, especially when they need to blow up to the extent that Marathon needs to blow up, because like Marathon can't just be okay. Marathon has to basically single-handedly justify a $3.7 billion acquisition. And do you have any idea how big this game would have to be? Like I said earlier on stream, GTA 6 is expected to cost roughly $2 billion, somewhere between $1 and $2 billion, especially when you factor in marketing and stuff, which is going to be crazy once they ramp it up. It's going to be a massive game in terms of budget and total cost. They will make a profit on it though. Their current public financials in their like 10Ks and everything that they've published for investors, they expect to see, a $4 to $5 billion boost over the next like 18 months once it launches in terms of revenue. It's going to bring in a lot of money. Do you think GTA 6's online mode is going to be smaller than Marathon? No, I think Marathon is going to be significantly smaller than what GTA 6 and GTA Online is going to make. But like Marathon needs to justify a $3.7 billion purchase. That's insane. That is so much money. So, I mean, they need it to be a smash hit. The other thing that they're working on, Guerrilla is working on a Horizon Zero Dawn multiplayer game. They have hundreds of people working on it. Like, it's a massive, massive project. It seems all hands on deck for that game. They are not, my understanding is that like they have a single player game in pre-production, but all of their dev talent is working on that live service game. All of them. And that's the one that kind of looks like Fortnite mixed with Monster Hunter. Who knows? My impulse, my gut check is that if people like hunting monsters in games, they will play a little known niche franchise that's probably going to blow up this year called Monster Hunter. And they'll put most of their time into that, playing that with their friends. Maybe the Horizon multiplayer Monster Hunter game is so good that people just eat it up and it becomes the new crazy trend. I'd love to have a new crazy trend for all of us to sink our teeth into, but we'll see. I think the odds of it taking over Monster Hunter in the year of Monster Hunter is lower. They might push it into 2026, and if it has a year apart from Monster Hunter, then I could see it finding some success. But what is the age-old like meme? What's the meme of Horizon? It's that Herman Holst and all those guys are like super maybe over emphatic, over enthusiastic with Horizon. They think it's way bigger than it probably actually is for the average consumer, and they always try to make it a thing. You know, they just announced their green lighting, like what was the story? I've already forgotten because that's how little I really care about Horizon stuff. I posted a tweet about it. Yeah, they're making it a major motion picture. Again, who asked for a Horizon movie? Stop trying to make fetch happen. For real. It's just like, the game's fine. Like, even pretty good. I don't know who's asking for a movie. Who wants a movie, man? But with this, because of that overconfidence, maybe Jor did. Yeah, probably. He's gonna represent like half of the total ticket sales. Who knows? we love making fun of Jor for Horizon. You know, we love poking fun. Even though I'm like, no, they're like B- games. Like, they're pretty good. I just don't think they're masterpieces, but PlayStation acts as though they're masterpieces, and it drives me crazy. Part of this overconfidence is that they pair the game with things that it really shouldn't be paired against. Horizon Zero Dawn notably went right up head to head with Breath of the Wild and the launch of the Switch for some reason. Like, it launched right at the end of February, right next to the launch of Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild reviews come out. It's a 10 out of 10, a masterpiece across the board. And so it kind of got stomped on a little bit. And I remember there being a ton of reporting at the time where journalists were like, maybe it could have done even better with sales if it were given a little more breathing room. And it ended up doing very, very well in the long term. And it had a long tail in terms of sales, but it kind of stumbled out of the gate because so much attention was on the Switch and Breath of the Wild because that game was so fantastic. And then what did they do for the sequel? They launched it like literally right next to Elden Ring. Like, why? It's a totally unnecessary mistake. So what are they going to do this time around? They're probably going to wait to launch the Horizon multiplayer game until they find out the release date of Elden Ring 2 and the Bloodborne remaster, and then they'll somehow manage to launch on the same day as both, probably. Bold strategy, Cotton. We'll see how this works out for them. Yeah, that's just what they do, though. They think that they're like, they can go head to head with those, and I don't think that they can, frankly. But they have that in the works. That's a big budget live service game that they need to pop off and do really, really well. And in terms of other ones that they're also working on, you know, there's sort of speculation with some of it. We're not totally sure what else there may be that they're working on. Like I said earlier, when we looked at this tweet from Radek, Fair Games, Horizon Multiplayer Marathon needs to be big. The NCSoft MMO for Horizon, who knows? I don't think they want to launch these next to each other, right? Like, why would you launch an MMO right next to a multiplayer game in the same franchise? I think you want to give it breathing room. So this thing, probably the NCSoft game is a little further off. The multiplayer game is supposedly like pretty set, pretty much done. Not done, but like, you know, it's nearing being done. So we probably see this revealed very soon. But all these unannounced games, who knows if we ever see that. I think the Bungie Gummy Bears game thing was canceled, but maybe it wasn't. It's just, they've spent so much time, so much money on these. They're going to put the other ones out that are pretty much done and ready to put out. But at that point, like, I just don't think they're greenlighting any other live service games. I think the guy Hiroki Totoki, who is now the president of Sony, served as the CFO. Yeah, this guy. He is now like one of the big movers in the company. I mean, he's the guy. And his whole thing is margins. He was asked in an interview, what is your focus as the leader of this business? And he said, margin. And you know a surefire way to minimize your margins? To waste billions of dollars on crap. That's a great way to minimize your margins. The notable thing was that they said at this point in the generation, the PlayStation 5 and its games, its business in general, should be operating at like a 20% margin. You know, they should be making 20 cents on every dollar. PlayStation is stuck down at 6. And after canceling these projects and the other ones that they've canceled, Concord's implosion, those types of things, they depending on how they account for it, because accounting can be kind of like statistics. There's lies, damn lies, and statistics. It's like depending on where you put the money that you spent, you can make it look better or worse. But depending on when they wrote off the costs of those games and those projects, their margins could be below 6% now. They could be down at 5 or 4%. We'll see when they file their final year reports and everything at the end of their fiscal year. But all told, like, their business is not where it should be after what is allegedly like a dominating generational performance with the PS5. They are not actually financially where you would expect them to be, which is why investors have been pretty perturbed. And I think Totoki is going to kind of force them to figure their crap out. And what he's going to do, and mark my words, this isn't like a bold prediction or anything, because it's pretty evident that this is where they're going. Totoki is going to force them to stop wasting money on high-risk projects. And as a result, I think that means new IP, much rarer. There's ones already greenlit, like the one from Naughty Dog, but Naughty Dog is kind of an exceptional case. They can do whatever they want. There's rumors of a new IP coming from Santa Monica Studios, specifically Cory Barlog, that has been greenlit for a long time. So that probably sees the light of day, but I don't think we see any other crazy green lights of new IP moving forward from now. And I also think that you're going to see a lot more day and date PC launches. I think you're going to see a lot more ports. There's rumors of a lot of their games coming to the Nintendo Switch 2. I think that's very, very likely. So I think they're just going to continue doubling down on those things that just continue to print money. And they're going to try to take many fewer risks, which is probably smart after wasting billions of dollars on all this nonsense. Yeah, and new IP are already rare. Yes, already. And part of the reason that they're rare right now is because for the last 5 years, as game budgets have ballooned to a crazy extent, you've seen studios and publishers realize that they need to widen margins somehow. And part of the way that they're doing that is by giving players what is more reliable in terms of performance financially, and that's sequels, that's remakes and remasters that are really cheap to put out, that people buy for sake of nostalgia or whatever else. And so if you're already feeling like there's sort of a creative stagnation in the industry, it's probably only going to get worse moving forward. But yeah, Concord was a new IP. Oh, they're like, we gave you what you wanted and you didn't like it. But here we are, man. Here we are. We're at the precipice of either a total transformation for Sony, where they're going back to basics, back to the single player way of things, back focusing on what has performed well, which are narrative single player games focused on quality first, innovation second, and greedy monetization third, perhaps. Or we're going to witness just the total creative bankruptcy of PlayStation, and they're just going to become even more focused on pumping out remakes, remasters, remakes of remasters, etc., etc. It's a rough time. This is also grim. Bizarrely enough, the one company that has an onslaught, a variable, again, plethora of new IP coming down the slope is Xbox with their studios. They have a lot of new IP, reboots of old IP. They have a pretty crazy number of pretty ambitious projects, which is not where I thought we would be when this generation started. I thought, oh, PlayStation's going to probably continue dominating this generation, and Xbox is going to try to figure out how to make things work with ZeniMax, and we'll go from there. But so far this generation, like, it's kind of remarkable, but Sony has been the one just putting out the soulless garbage. And occasionally, you know, we get something really good from them. We get the, you know, a God of War Ragnarok, we get a Helldivers 2 occasionally, but we also have gotten a lot of just blech, you know? And it's like, I can appreciate a remake or a remaster here and there, but man, when that seemingly is all your company is focused on right now, it's kind of depressing. Why not just make any single player games? Because single player games are freakishly expensive right now. And if they flop, like the studio goes under. And so they only want to greenlight the single player games that are going to be guaranteed hits. And even when they greenlight those, you end up with like a Spider-Man 2 situation, which cost, but according to some of the leaks, as much as $300 million to make. And I mean, it made a lot of money. I but I don't even know if it's in that spot yet where it's like a big financial success for them. Alan Wake 2 might have changed in the last month or two, but as of like this past December, Alan Wake 2 was still not profitable. It was still not profitable after like a year plus out. That's crazy. That's crazy. But that's just where we are. I mean, these games cost so freaking much to make. And so something's got to give, which leads us into our next topic. And if you're watching this as a stream clip, you should check out the other stream clip I'm about to do on how a game industry analyst and some various people are hoping that GTA 6 will cost $100 so that other publishers can justify upping the price to that point. So that's what we're going to talk about now, because here we are. He took my thing. Red flag.